Hey. Hey. So, it's spooky season and it's getting cold and my room is a mess because I work too much on the weekends at a theme park. So, I've decamped. This evening's show is coming to you from a large room in the house that I live in one of my favorite chairs that I reupholstered. I've got my books and a hot toddy and hi Sally, hi Sean, hi Solar Shine. And I'm just gonna make a pillow fort. We're just gonna have a blanket fort situation, and I'm gonna rant about volunteerism, and then we're gonna read some science fiction, as usual. We usually climb into bed to do that, but today we're gonna do it here. Hi. So I hope you've brought your blanket. I'm wearing a sweater and a blanket at the moment. I've got books for us to read. Well, for me to read to you. That's really more of how this works. And I'm on Instagram right now as well, because there are people on Instagram who never come to Twitch and vice versa. So I'm trying something out. The thing about a blanket fort is you usually have to build some kind of structure. So I was thinking like around the back of the chair, and then I can kind of be inside of it like a tent. I've also was thinking that it's not quite a sleepover or a blanket fort unless you invite your friends. So I put the call out on the Net21 Facebook page if anybody wanted to join from all of the shows. We'll see if anybody shows up. And we can braid each other's hair and talk about minimum wage, whatever it is that I do on this channel. So yeah. Here we are. How's your week? Hello, Dovar and Sally. It's good to see you as always. I'm hella tired, but I didn't want to skip our Monday meetup. So here we are. Let me get a little closer. All right, I'm gonna move. Sally's already wearing a blanket. Is it a Snuggie or is it a blanket? I'll tell you the story of this fine cape that I find myself wearing as well. I gotta say, I look a lot better on the Instagram feed than I do over here. The beauty filter is really working for me on the Instagram. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I braid my hair all the time, so that's not unusual for me, and I'm good at it. So I'm just saying. Okay, so tell me about your week. Make sure you snuggle in. Tell me about your week. Take a sip of something warm. What happened this week? Like I said, I work at a theme park during their haunt, the King's Dominion theme park for their haunt, and in the costume shop. So I get in about 2 and I leave about 1:30 in the morning. I leave about 2 in the morning. Oh yeah, that's a good hot toddy. I could actually use more whiskey, but it's really good. It's fresh lemon juice, raw local honey, and a gifted whiskey. And this is basically what I have at the end of the day when I come home from work, because it's 2 in the morning and I'm really tired, but I'm my brain is still really awake. No, it's the other way around. My brain is really, really tired, but my body is still awake, and because it's like gone past its second wind. And so I drink a hot toddy to like force my muscles to relax. So, and it's full of good things. It's full of vitamin C, whatever else that's good that's in honey. It's antiseptic. Let's see. So I was thinking before we dive in, because we finished a book last week, we have to figure out something new to read. So I was thinking that about volunteerism, and like, I don't have a lot of money in my life, but sometimes I have a lot of time. Not at the moment. I have 0 time at the moment, but that'll end in about a month, 2 months, and then I'll have a lot of time again because of the seasonality of the work that I do. And so I signed up to work for the International Rescue Committee out of Richmond because there's a flood of Afghan refugees coming in who need a place to live and to set up a new life and a community. And that's refugee work has always been something I care a lot about. Very serious conversation. So I figured they need extra help and I have time, but I don't have money. And so I signed up about 2 months ago when I did have time, but they've just been flooded with people wanting to help. So they've been like really slowly chewing through their applicants, because you have to like get a background check and like do all sorts of things to work with refugees because they're in a very seriously at risk community. And like, I've done some work with mending walls here in Richmond, and I've worked, not a lot in volunteering. So I wonder, like, what do you guys do that you would consider volunteering? Is it church stuff? Is it reading to kids at libraries? Is it like, what is it? What would you consider that you do that's volunteering? Do you even have time for that? Do you even consider what you do as a gift that you don't get compensated for as volunteering? Or do you just think of that as community service or like being a good human? I don't know. I'm curious. So drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear. And I was just thinking about, like, I have an auntie who is 83 and neurodivergent, and I'm helping her start her blog back up so that she has a record of her work. She's a writer. She's been writing for decades and decades. She went to Russia before the Iron Curtain fell and after to do some teaching and some religious work. And she wants to have like a time capsule essentially of her work, a catalog, a compendium, you could even say. And I agreed to help her. And she's like, I insist on paying you. And I'm like, okay. She's not paying me my hourly rate. She's paying me less than half of my hourly rate. So I'm, I was just thinking today about how that is a kind of volunteering or volunteerism or communitarianism, to be like, I am, and she's not the only person who's like a little older and a little less tech literate who needs website building help or blog help, because things have changed so much. So would I say that I'm helping the elderly with tech literacy and website building? Yeah, I would. So that was a bit of a shift in my thinking. Okay, Sally says, Scouts and Community Emergency Response Team. Ooh, sorry, I've very stupidly put something in front of the comment section, so I can't actually read it. I'm gonna change that. Oh, this is gonna be so bad. I'm trying my best, guys. I'm trying my best. Let's see if it screws up. Scouts and Community Emergency Response. Right now, only medical assistance is needed for Afghan refugees. I help with fund runs, doing massages for the volunteers. What's a fund run? Is that like a 5K thing where people raise money and then they run Are you a massage therapist? This is information I find important and useful. And you do, there's a massage. If I knew that there was a massage at the end of a 5K, I would run a 5K. I would. Let's be honest, I wouldn't run a 5K. I don't run. Run is not a thing. Running is not a thing that my genetics do. Hey, we have a comment asking if there's a game tomorrow. There is a game tomorrow. Tonight, on Monday nights, it's GlamourHobo Bedtime Tales. So we chat and we read some science fiction. But tomorrow, there is the game. On Tuesdays, it's games actually most of the days of the week. Here, let me throw up the, not throw up, but put up the banner that has the schedule since you asked. Oh, goodness. Where is it? It is here. Ta-da! That is the October schedule. So they do... Lady Prudence does a show right before mine. And as you can see, there is 4 nights a week. There is gaming. So set your calendars. It's like the Baskin Robbins of games, all sorts of games. Hi, Terpsichore Rocks over on Instagram. We're chatting and reading some science fiction every Monday night. All right, I'm back. Okay, so switch back to my brand. Thanks, Honey Salad. It's a NOLA thing. We do it at certain festivals that have charity runs. You know, I've been to New Orleans twice, and neither time was exceptional. I had fun. The first time was fun. It was November, good weather. Second time, I was really disappointed in the Fringe Festival that I went to see, and so I just fucked off from that and went to the Treme Jazz and Creole Festival, which was pretty awesome. Spent a lot of money on hats that year, and I do not regret it. So yeah, if what do you consider volunteerism? Is it volunteering your time at absolutely no cost? Do you consider reducing your rate for people an active volunteering? Do you search out opportunities, or do you let things come to you? Like, how do you guys feel about this? And the announcement of the hour is I will soon be leaving Awesome Town for a new nest, but still in Richmond, at least for another year. And so part of the decision to stay in the city, even though I'm leaving Awesome Town, is because I want to dig into the city a little bit more and dig into the community here and the volunteer work and the job that I have at King's Dominion and learn a bit more and build a bit more before I just sell all my stuff and move to Australia. Speaking of which, if you need a 24-channel sound mixer that's really good, have I got the sound mixer for you? Okay. So it's not really a rant today. It's more about questioning about community stuff, communitarianism, volunteering, why it's important, how you do it. I honestly think part of it is that we have to have boundaries around the things that we want to do. You know, like work can sometimes be the thing that sucks you dry. And volunteering, even though it is an act of giving, is something that often fills people up. So fills up your soul, fills up your teacup, as they say. But it's been on my mind. All right, it's time to choose what we're reading tonight. And to Sally's question, why Australia? Because Australia is fucking dope. I love Australia. Hi, Johnny on Twitch. I love Australia, and it's wonderful. I've been there twice for festivals, and it's just wonderful. The food is excellent. The weather is crazy lovely. It's hot and dry, but I love it. And the people are great, and they want to be your best friend, and the country wants to be your best friend. And they're doing a lot of work in the art sector to mitigate the 2 centuries of colonial oppression, and reintegrate new and old ways of animist thinking with the indigenous people from there. And some places are, hey Steve Brady in Australia is watching on Instagram, which is amazing. What timing. And the art stuff is just, it's brilliant. Unfortunately, their arts sector right now is hemorrhaging because of COVID. And there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. And so that's really hard when the thing that makes their culture so wonderful and lovely is bleeding out, because there's no funding for artists, and there's during COVID, and there's venues have very strict maximums of people that can be inside of them. And it's hot as balls outside, so you can't do shows outside all year round. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, over on Instagram, but it's hard right now to be an arts maker in Australia. But I'm coming for ya. I really, really, really want to live like half my year or a third of my year in Australia. My best case scenario is like 3 to 4 months in Australia, a little bit of time in the US, and then like touring Scotland and Europe. Like, that's my best case scenario. Australia, Holland, and Canada. Really? I wouldn't say Canada and Australia have similarly tempered people. I lived in Canada when I was 18 for 6 months on the road as part of a dance troupe. They're nice. That's hella certain. But they're, they're a little guarded. Haven't been to Holland yet. I'll put it on the list. Okay. So here we are. It's book time. We can go back to Creatures of Light and Darkness, which is that super weird science fiction about the House of the Dead. We have more space opera as usual, but we've been on a Cat Valente kick, so I feel like maybe we should take a break from Cat Valente. And then, of course, we can go back to Railsea by China Miéville, which is brilliant and also like super Olympic reading because the words are so hard. The syntax is so hard. Over on Instagram, Steve from Australia says, love to have me here again. Oh God, seriously though. I love Adelaide so much. Space or rails? Sally says space or rails. Put in your vote, internet. Drop it in the comments. We just started this one and we're about midway. Although, if I'm not mistaken, the chapter that we're about to read in space opera is about them going to the cocktail party at the beginning of the Pan-Galactic Grand Prix, which is crazy. Let's check. Does anyone remember where we stopped? In case you're wondering, my name is Carmel. I am your GlamourHobo bedtime tale teller. I am currently beaming to you over the internet from Powhatan Land, in what is now known as Virginia, from the Awesome Town Studios. And This is our Monday nights. I read you a story. I rant about something. You guys seem to like that part, so I keep doing more and more of it. And where were we? If you haven't been watching the show before, you can go back and catch up. For the past, I'd say 4 or 5 episodes, we were reading one book all the way through. It was a short novella, which was a mashup of the 12 Dancing Princesses folk story with a Gatsby-esque Zelda Fitzgerald origin story based in 1920s New York, Prohibition New York. It was pretty amazing. And so you can catch all of that on my YouTube page. Four Corners USA. Honey salad. I don't know if I've been to Four Corners. I've been to Rock City, which you can see 4 different states from, like Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. I could be wrong about that, but I haven't been to Four Corners. Oh, I think I found where we were. Are you in your blanket fort? You can join me in mine. It's snuggle season here in the North Hemisphere. And my cup has a little hat to keep it warm. All right. So, as you may know, the story of space opera is that there is a thing called the Pan-Galactic Grand Prix, which is essentially Eurovision in space. And once a species becomes sentient, or seems like it's going to be a problem for the rest of the universe, they are they are contacted by everyone else and said, okay, you have to sing for your life, essentially. You have to, you have to sing in this context, because this contest says, like, how do you know if something is meat or if it is a person? How do you gauge sentience? And music seems to be the mark. So we haven't. We're not at that part. We're not yet at that really memorable. Really, really memorable. Oh, we're not going to get to it tonight. But anyways, okay, here we are. All right, everybody. I'm going to bring my mic a bit closer so you have better sounds. Ugh. Chapter 19. So here we are on the way to the contest, and the band called Decibel Jones and the Absolute Zeros have been selected as the human ambassadors to the contest. 19. The war is not over. The 29th Metagalactic Grand Prix was held on Fennec, the homeworld of the Vorpret mutation. It was the first time a member species of the Great Octave declined to participate, ruining everyone's fun over an argument about sand. I'll go over here. It was the first time a performer died on stage as a result of weaponized key change, bass drop, and or costume detonation. It was the first time a newly discovered species sang for their sentience, sang for the survival of the fittest, sang their sang their externally snored hearts out, and failed. And it was the first time anyone felt safe enough to hold the thing on Fennec. It was a very complicated year. There was absolutely nothing unusual about Fennec. It was the avatar of the average, the model of the median, a beautifully boilerplate world. It orbited an even-tempered, comfortably middle-class yellow sun at a respectable distance, boasted a galactic biodiversity rating of exactly meh, and kept its gravity to a considerate low roar, except on the weekends. Before the Vourpret, Fennec's best shot at a sentient species was something not unlike an earth sparrow the size of an underachieving mountain gorilla with 5 eyes and dull brown feathers and dull brown minds that very nearly made it all the way up to inventing the participle before everything went tails up. Excuse me. It was the planetary equivalent of the girl next door, with the nice personality whose face you instantly forget when you move away to college, destined from birth to have a house with beige carpeting, 2.5 moons, and a causal home business selling scented candles to people who hate scented candles. I know those girls. God, I know those girls. Or at least it was, before the zombie apocalypse. Now Fennec is a very unusual world indeed. The Vourpret have been at work for a long, long time, tinkering and potting and DIYing and messing about with the landscaping, and they've almost got the place just the way they always wanted it. Their dream world, every plank in place. Fennec has become a vast necropolis, a massive cemetery extending from pole to pole around the equator, carpeting all 9 continents, the ice caps and the seafloor with tombs and mausoleums and graves and towering urns like high-rise apartment buildings. It is a planet to make the dreariest goth giddy with joy, and if not for the Vourpret themselves, would be a lucrative tourist destination for statuary and monument enthusiasts, of which there are more than you might think. Unfortunately, there are the Vourpret themselves, easily the most problematic species encountered by the Alinuzar, Utarak, Cachette, and Hughes ships that poured out of the surprise wormhole nearby. They were the last accepted into the Great Octave after the war, and only by a single vote. It is difficult enough to accept magenta algae or gas-filled balloons or computer code as living, sentient, valuable entities without having to get your head around anything as instinctively repulsive as the Vourpret. You cannot, technically speaking, see a Vourpret. You cannot smell one or hear one or taste one or put one in a cage. And if you've touched a Vourpret, it's already too late. A Vourpret is a virus. Simply the most successful virus outbreak in the history of the galaxy, infecting, replicating, mutating, spreading, and absolutely liquefying their hosts since before humans ever imagined that oversized frontal lobes were this season's must-have accessory. In the halcyon days of their youth, the Voorpret were a humble hemorrhagic fever originating in the rainforest of Fenwick's northern hemisphere, toddling about, learning their pathogenic ABCs, killing proto-primates and ungulates far too quickly to become a pandemic to write home about. But they mutated and replicated and learned, as life has a tendency to do, and since the dull brown giant sparrows at the top of Fenwick's unsuspecting food chain had barely mastered subtraction, they had little in the way of virology experts, vaccines, or affordable treatment options, and the Voorpret had all the time in the world to rein in their adolescent hormones and graduate into a lucrative career in what polite society calls soft real estate. Once a Voorpret infection occurs, the virus fully inhabits the host within a few hours, resulting in lesions, fevers, hair loss, bleeding from places no one is meant to bleed from, chunks of liver shooting out of the eyeballs, total annihilation of personality, the usual horror movie floor show symptoms. The invading Voorpret reservoir can and does work the unfortunate body like a marionette, speaking, dancing, using tools, building a civilization. They are the hand within the glove. The kid underneath the sheet in the Halloween yelling to anyone who will listen that he's a really real ghost and he's going to get you. There is no cure. The Voorpret consider immunological research to be a declaration of war. Death follows within a week or so, but death no longer presents any sort of roadblock for the Voorpret virus. They continue to squat in the empty corpse as long as the decomposition can hold the ligaments together, dispersing to new digs only when the old ones have soupified into a chunky stew. Bet you didn't know we were reading about viruses and Halloween-style horror, did you? Voorpret civilization is the most hideous gentrification project undertaken since the yuppies took over Alphabet City. You can't see a Voorpret, technically, not without a microscope and a hazmat suit, but you can see the skin it's in, and you can absolutely smell it from 3 planets away. A Voorpret is just the shambling corpse of whomever is infected last. They aren't picky, jumping from species to species with a vaudeville smile, a high kick, and a tip of a putrefying hat. It would have been busy. Start over. It would have been an easy call to wipe them out. In the which of us are people and which of us are meat equation, a cheerfully rapacious zombie virus with a fatality rate of 99% and a total disregard for the bodily autonomy of anyone anywhere seemed, on paper, to fall safely in the meat column. Contaminated meat. Do not consume. Except that the Voorpret turned out to be really rather good at the whole civilization thing. Yes, they obliterated the natural biodiversity of any region they touched, but wherever their infection took hold, they opened a lot of delightful bistros and shops and startup tech companies with whimsically casual workplace environments and fusion food trucks and artisanal blacksmithing co-ops and performance art spaces. Crime rates fell drastically since everyone was Voorpret, and the Voorpret were everyone, and wherever they went, good, accessible public transportation followed. Because after a few months, corpses start to have real trouble staying ambulatory. Oh, the Alanuzar wanted to exterminate him. The Smaragdi offered to open up a few choice moons for colonization if they'd agreed to do it. Despite the shameful behavior of the foreign invader, the Jiv begged the Uteract to rid them of the zombie menace. Even the Claveret were willing to look the other way. But you've just never had better coffee than the fair trade organic late harvest darkest of dark roasts at a Vorpret espresso bar. And you don't nuke that sort of thing from orbit. It's just so hard to find a good cappuccino when you're traveling. I hope all of you are as disgusted as I am. But there are limits to how far anyone will go for a functional public transportation system and locally sourced pastries. After Vlimu, everyone demanded a separate treaty for the Vorpret before they would even consider letting them into the new spheres of galactic influence. The Vorpret would agree to infect only willing hosts, non-sentient species smaller than a bread box, or the freshly dead, providing the recently deceased had filled out his or her or its or their or Zir or Goof's organ donation card beforehand in front of 2 notarized witnesses. Any unauthorized outbreaks that could not show paperwork would be instantly sterilized. The zombie planet would have to behave itself and share its recipes or be quarantined. As a result of this agreement, rents in Vorpret-adjacent zones soared. The down payment on a new studio body with low wear and tear, fresh paint, and all the amenities shot through the roof. The elderly, terminally ill, bored, or risk-prone sentient being could name their price. Yet, most galactic citizens remained nervous about visiting Fennec itself, despite the thriving theater scene and delightful nightlife. While love and peace may come to exist between wildly disparate members of different kingdoms, orders, and phyla, very few are willing to meet up with a walking, talking syphilis infection for coffee, even the best coffee in the universe, unless it's in a public place, close to their own flat, with lots of friends around, and easy exits. Ooh, I've been on that date, that's for sure. Yes, it could not be denied that the Vorpret band Applausoleum had handily won the 28th Metagalactic Grand Prix with their dark wave prog grunge power ballad, I Can't Get No Liquefaction. It's really next to impossible to stay on key with a half-decomposed larynx and a moldering diaphragm. So Vorpret music takes the form of a genetically modified worm about the size and shape of a dragonfly larva, dispersed into the audience via sprinkler system. Trendy vintage beers on tap at the bar, silver platter passed among the paying public by attractive ushers, or t-shirt cannon, depending on how posh the venue. The little creature burrows down into the auditory orifice and vibrates to the tune of the composition, eating sadness, excreting euphoria, and laying its eggs, which, when hatched, will depart unobtrusively while the fan sleeps the night off, carrying the genetically remixed song to new hosts everywhere. The Vorpret refer to the peak of their artistic expression and cultural contribution to the galaxy as Tixliai, which translates roughly into English as earworm. She is so clever. She's so fucking clever. Ah! But between Applausoleum's triumph and the 29th Grand Prix, set to rock the stage at Shady Meadows Crematorium, the Vorpret had risen quite a bit in the ranks of the Great Galactic Popularity Contest in the same way that any unpopular, unattractive, unhygienic child does. by finding someone weirder and more off-putting than themselves to point at. That someone was Flus. The Soulshit trash folk silk step trio Porchlight picked up Flus on their tour ship's long-range scans coming home from the previous year's Grand Prix, where they'd placed a wildly unexpected fifth. Their replay of the GP mixtape and celebratory orgy was rudely interrupted by a surprisingly strong radio broadcast pumping out top 40 hits from the planet they would come to know as Munton. Munton's top 40 hit songs, however, were all the same song, and that song was called Flus. Flus? Flus. I think that's what I decided. Which was also the name of the radio station, Flus FM, your home for rock and drive time Flusic. Oh my god. Oh shit. How am I supposed to put my hot toddy while I turn the page? Turn page. The building that housed the station offices and studio and street the studio was on, the city through which the city ran, the sandwich on the DJ's desk inside the recording booth, the DJ himself, the intern who brought him the sandwich, the studio boss, and the star around which all the rest of the nonsense was currently orbiting, blasting out a repetitive 3-chord screamo chant that went, "It was awesome to be Flus. If you are not Flus, you are not awesome, and will promptly be consumed. Also your children and pets. Go, Flus, go. Flus the world. Flus it so hard. Then go back and Flus it again." It was a one-hit wonder. But on Munton, one is all you need. Any attempt at describing Munton's dominant species is probably best kept simple and direct. One word, if possible, and that word is Knifesaurus. Knifesaurus. They were called Flus, which might have been a first clue, except that the Ursulas were such upstanding members of society that they all had the same name. So it didn't do to be prejudiced. Thank you very much. Hive minds have proven to be a perfectly good way of solving the intractable issues of universal healthcare and basic income. This Flus fellow seemed like a real piece of work, as reported by the Soulshit and researched by the Keshet, something of a cross between Hitler, Stalin, and Bono, with low blood sugar, who had been terrifically successful at taking over the planet some years back, but one couldn't possibly judge an entire species based on the actions of one person. Munton was a huge planet. Surely they had pacifists and philosophers too. There's always bad sorts. There's always terrors. The Smaragdi pointed out that the Alanuzar Emperor Umpelu to the 8th power once enslaved the air itself, and they still got to choose what to watch on telly once in a while. The citizens of Munton couldn't help that they are knife-faced horror lizards, admitted the Claveret. They were individuals. They weren't all like that just because one was. Alas, they were all like that. Mainly because the original Flus had broken off from the collective consciousness ages back, conquered everything he could get his blades on, and replaced the local gene pool with his own personal microbrew. So not only were they a hive mind, but they were all clones as well. And Munton was, in point of fact, Planet Hitler, 100% populated with telepathically linked, genetically identical sociopathic Knifesaurus dictators. Upon first contact, they perkily informed their helpful Grand Prix chaperone that she would soon become Floos, as would her children, and their children's children down to the uttermost end of time, and would she like a Floosburger. There was nothing better than a Floosburger, and the Floosone on a hot day, like this one. This might seem like an obvious case, ready for a fiery death and subsequent binning, but there was always the Voorpret. They had been brought into the fold, had they not? And how different was a Floos infection from a Voorpret infection? Besides, Floosburgers were actually delicious, and the planet as a whole had a real passion for painting landscapes and architecture, and even if Flooscapes were a little anemic and cold for galactic tastes, a good gallery scene and public funding for the arts should count for something, shouldn't it? I'm adjusting. Just gonna burrowing. I hope you're in your blankets as well. Okay. Yeah. This chair might have been a bad choice. They did manage to live together rather peacefully for billions of egomaniacal dictators. It had been 100 years since the last Muntin War. The Great Octave congratulated itself on being so open-minded as to let Planet Hitler sing a nice little song before they defended themselves against the mess. They all agreed it was truly wonderful that they'd learned such valuable lessons from the war, and weren't they all proving to be just fabulously enlightened these days? The Mamtak aggregate won the GP that year for the trillion kingdoms of Use, a silicate particulate cloud made of millions of individual tiny beings that sang by releasing synesthesic pheromones and then forming themselves into complex pictures in the air. The sensorially addled audience would then hear the images as a song. The effect only lasted a few weeks, which always provided an enormous boost to photography exhibitions once everyone returned home. Their song of longing and peace and tender care for all living things, I Want to Hold Your Sand, topped everyone's list of best Grand Prix songs for years afterwards, and the Mamtek aggregate went on to become one half of the beloved Master of Ceremonies team that hosted the metagalactic festivities in true postmodern style to this day, along with the dry, self-deprecating wit of the Alex soprano DJ Lights Out, winner of the 41st Grand Prix for her immortal torch song, The Dark at the End of the Tunnel, sung via uplink to the beat of poor Sagrada's carpet bombing by the Endvari, a species of furry armored slugs whose recreational drug of choice is pain and fear, and did not go entirely quietly when they lost the 38th Grand Prix after eating half the judges and calling it a song. The Alanazar actually came in the middle of the pack for once with "Don't hate me because my culture is superior to yours," but mainly because the Utarak had declined to attend due to an argument with the trillion kingdoms of Use over whether or not any silicate portions of the stone Utarak anatomy that crumbled away should be swept up and tossed out, or had inalienable citizenship rights among the intelligent sand dunes of the Use, and therefore forfeited their place. When Floos took the stage, all fell silent. The various committees had done everything they could to make them feel comfortable, friendly toward his new neighbors, secure and well-liked. They could do nothing more to help. He had no costume. He had no set. He had no fire effects or lighting displays or gravity projections. These things were unnecessary when you were a 2-ton dagger-tailed illustration of the concept of solipsism. He hated all this glitter and fuss and lurid, flashy, terrible, suspect stuff. All you needed to be truly entertained was yourself, a military uniform with clean, masculine lines, an unwavering loyalty to the collective, and the suffering of anyone not yourself. He had seen no point in a band name, as all was Floos, and Floos was all, and everyone here would be Floos as well, momentarily. Once he could get a bead on how their weapon systems work, but when pressed by the Keshet and Al-Nazar judges, begrudgingly wrote down Floos loose on the form. Floos stood center stage. The footlights glinted on his blade body, and proceeded to atonally scream sing by grinding the knives of his face together. It was awesome to be Floos. If you are not Floos, you are not awesome. And will promptly be consumed, also your children and pets. Go, Floos, go! Floos the world, Floos it so hard, then go back and Floos it again. Back up, over it, put it in gear, hit the gas. Once more with Floos, go Floos for yourself. Floos yourself, but no, actually. It was the only song he knew. The best song. The song of himself. Floos had written it, composed it, sung it with all the vocals, played lead face on the track, produced it, mastered it, and designated the album art, all by his billion selves. It had gone infinite platinum, twice. What could ever be better than Floos? A bunch of sand in the shape of a heart? Yeah, right. Why were they not clapping? Why were they not looking so bloody sad? Why were they so obstinately not Floos? Floos was still asking himself this when the first Al-Nazar gunships descended into low orbit around Munton, and their shadows darkened the seas. Very quick little mini chapter, and then we will break for the night. My hot toddy is no longer hot. Now it's just whiskey and lemon and honey and water. <clears throat> 20. Love and Rewind. White! The voice of Decibel Jones echoed down the fluorescent black coral hallway, disturbing the chartreuse cilia wherever they bounced. Wait! Ooh! Little buddy! Oh, that's probably racist. I'm sorry. Sir! Ooh, good. Wait. Good God, you're a quick little runner. Shit. Sorry again. The time-traveling red panda paused in his epic battle with staying on his own four legs and not spending his entire life arse of a tea kettle, and peered up, deeply annoyed, into the Englishman's eyes. Those eyes as black as stout, and the sticks were almost as vulnerable and needy and yearning as any Eska's. What you want? You Keshet travel in time, yeah? That's what the bird said. You know, that's very rude. Rude and just weird. It's like me saying, you humans reproduce with a uterus, yeah? And you'd say, yes, I suppose, but hell, when you say it like that, it just sounds gross. Right. Sorry again. But you do. Yes, for God's sake. And you see every timeline, all laid out like taxes, every single way, every single everything could ever or would ever go. This is pornographic, Mr. Jones. And you went rummaging through timelines on Earth and whatnot. You had to get Walter over there in the engine room and his leg over, yeah? Please stop. I have to go. I left the Industrial Revolution running. Decibel Jones, glitterpunk saint, sinner, and siren stared down at the plush red creature wringing his tail between his hands in abject embarrassment. Well, I was only wondering, can you tell me where I went wrong? Please, everything was so good. Everything was like Elmer finally catching bugs, and it was like that all over and over for months and years, and then it wasn't. I had something back then. All of the sudden I couldn't ever get it back, but it's like I couldn't tell the difference between the day it all got its face bashed in and the day after. So when did I fuck up? Was it that night? Should I have said yes? Should I have kissed her until she stopped crying and then ordered room service? What should I have done different? There had to be a moment when I could have kept it together, but I didn't. Infinite timelines and possibilities unfolded in the eyes of the Keshet like points on a map of the galaxy. Grids and branches and forks and veins of mathematical destiny flashing away into the dark like spent sparklers on a deep summer night in someone else's childhood. Ooh, patted Decibel's knee. What if you did? All right, last section of the book. Dear ones, what a question, right? What if there was a way to look at all of the things that you'd ever fucked up and go back somehow and fix it, or not do the thing that broke it? I have a lot, but I actually don't have any that I would really rely on. There's nothing in my personal history that I regret so much that I would take it back. There are things I'm ashamed of, and there are things that I do regret, and there are things that I wish I could have handled more smoothly and better, and things that I'm still hurt by. But there isn't anything I would ask a time-traveling red panda to fix or to point out to me in order to make it better. I've lived a very interesting life on this meat suit reality. Some of it's been really lovely and luscious, and some of it's been quite crap, quite hard. But yeah, I don't think there's anything that I would say if it were about wanting to feel more stable and secure in my resources always, but I know that that's usually just a trap. But I can't think of anything in my past that I would hugely change. What about you, dear ones? I've been married and divorced. I've lost a parent. I've really fucked up friendships. I've, been unhoused. I've had hard things, but I might not have gone to college. I think that's the only thing I would change. And not because I regret college. I mean, there's lots to regret about college, and lots to, student loan debt and all of that is very real and keeps us poor. But I think I'd go to trade school. I think I would set my smugness about trades to the side and go to trade school. But good night, everyone. It's the end of the show. Thank you, Honey Salad, for sticking around. I have to say, Johnny O Twitch, I don't agree. I guess there's only one way of doing this version of things, but I believe that the multiverse is vast and not all of it is material. This expression of the timeline, you probably cannot conceive of it repeating again. Maybe that's the difference. Good night, everyone. I'll see you next Monday. It is always my pleasure and my privilege to be with you. Good night.